Prisoner of Darkness, The Mystery of Disappearance. Faizan, as usual, went out for a walk with his German shepherd Tiger. He always preferred late-night walks because he loved the quiet streets and the cool breeze. Tiger was a loyal, brave, and intelligent dog. He always understood Faizan's gestures, walked beside him, and reacted immediately to anything unusual. "Come on, Tiger. Let's take a different route today," Faizan said with a smile, gripping the leash tightly as he turned into an unfamiliar alley. This alley was eerily silent. There weren't many lights. Only a few old street lamps flickered dimly. The air felt heavy, as if even the wind was afraid to move freely. As they walked, Faizan noticed an old, frail man sitting against a crumbling wall. His head was bowed, and he was mumbling something under his breath. As Faizan approached, the old man slowly lifted his head and whispered in a hushed tone, "This alley is cursed. Every dog that passes through here disappears." Faizan stopped in his tracks, frowning. "What do you mean?" The old man glanced around nervously, as if making sure no one else was listening. Then, in a low voice, he said, "You shouldn't have come here, child. Some things come alive in the darkness of the night." Faizan chuckled lightly. "Grandpa, you sound like a horror movie. I come here all the time. Nothing ever happens." The old man fell silent, taking a deep breath before leaning back against the wall. "All right, then. Whatever happens, happens," he muttered as if he already knew what was coming. Faizan shrugged and walked ahead. But then something strange happened. As they reached the middle of the alley, Tiger suddenly stopped. "Tiger, what's wrong?" Faizan turned back, confused. But Tiger's eyes were locked onto something in the darkness, something Faizan couldn't see. Suddenly, Tiger let out a deep, menacing growl. His fur bristled, his body tensed, as if sensing an imminent threat. Faizan tightened his grip on the leash. "Hey, calm down! There's nothing there!" But Tiger wouldn't stop staring. Then, whimper. A chilling gust of wind swept through the alley. Tiger suddenly yanked the leash, trying to dash into the shadows. "Tiger, stop!" Faizan pulled back with all his strength, but then, a forceful tug. The leash slipped from his hands. Tiger lunged into the darkness. The next moment, a terrifying scream echoed through the alley. "Whimper! Whimper!" Faizan's heart pounded violently. "Tiger!" But there was no response. He rushed forward, but what he saw made his blood run cold. Tiger was gone. Only his leash lay on the ground, as if someone had suddenly snatched him away into the shadows. Faizan's breath quickened. A shiver ran down his spine. What was this? The alley was silent. The dim streetlights still flickered weakly, but there was no sign of Tiger, no sound, no movement. Faizan looked around frantically, but everything seemed normal. Then he bent down and picked up the leash. It was cold, ice cold, as if it had been lying there for hours. And then, suddenly, a whisper floated through the air. "Don't come back." Faizan stumbled back, his heart thudding against his ribs. The whisper dissolved into the wind, as if it had never existed. But Faizan was sure of one thing. This night was not like any other, the scream that vanished into the air. The alley was swallowed by darkness. Faizan's eyes were fixed on the leash lying on the ground. Just moments ago it had been in his hands, and Tiger had been right beside him. But now, Tiger was gone. "Tiger!" Faizan called out, his voice echoing through the empty alley. Only the whisper of the wind responded. His mind struggled to process what had just happened. A second ago, everything was fine. And now, his most loyal companion had vanished, like he had never existed at all. Suddenly, a faint whisper floated through the air. "Don't come here!" Faizan spun around. There was nothing behind him, yet he could feel something unseen, watching him. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice unsteady. No reply. But there was a sound, the soft, unmistakable sound of footsteps. He froze. The dim light barely illuminated the alley, but at its far end something moved. A shadow, tall, undefined, appeared for a fleeting moment before vanishing into the darkness. Faizan's heart pounded. Was it just his imagination, or was something really there? Quickly, he pulled out his phone and switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the eerie silence, lighting up the abandoned alley walls. Nothing. Maybe I'm just imagining things, he tried to convince himself. But then, a shiver ran down his spine. Because there were footprints on the ground. Not tigers. No, these were much larger. Faizan's body tensed. These weren't normal paw prints. They were deep, strange, and unnervingly large. So large that they didn't seem to belong to any ordinary animal. Then the whisper returned. "Don't look for him." Faizan's blood ran cold. The voice was right next to his ear, as if someone had whispered directly into it before vanishing. He spun around instantly. Nothing. The air around him suddenly felt freezing, as if an invisible presence lingered there. What is this? Where is Tiger? His mind raced with questions, but there were no answers. Then his gaze fell upon an old house across the alley. The house was lifeless and dark, abandoned for who knows how long. Its door was rusted, its windows shattered. But the most disturbing thing was the way the door was slightly ajar, rocking gently as if beckoning him inside. A terrifying thought crept into Faizan's mind. Did someone take Tiger in there? He inhaled sharply and stepped forward. But the moment he approached, a sudden gust of wind blew through the alley, and the door slammed shut on its own. Faizan's instinct screamed at him. This is all wrong. He took a step back. There was no reason to stay here any longer. I'll come back tomorrow. I won't leave Tiger behind, he muttered to himself before turning away, his heart still racing. But just as he reached the corner of the alley, he heard it. A voice, calling his name. Faizan. He froze. It was familiar. It was Tiger's voice. Faizan whipped around, his breath caught in his throat. But there was no one there. The alley of secrets. Faizan hurried home, his mind racing with strange thoughts. He could never leave Tiger alone like this. But today, he had no choice. A shiver ran down his spine, as if something was following him. As soon as he reached home, he shut the door and went straight to his room. He quickly searched for the alley on Google Maps, but to his shock, it wasn't there. How is that possible? Faizan muttered. He zoomed in and out multiple times, but there was no sign of the alley, almost as if it had never existed. Why is this place so strange? And those voices I heard? Was it all just my imagination? Thousands of questions flooded his mind, but there were no answers. The next morning, Faizan went straight to the police station and told the officer on duty everything. The old policeman took a deep breath and spoke slowly. This isn't the first time, son. What do you mean? Faizan asked urgently. The officer lowered his head and whispered. In the past 2 years, many dogs have disappeared from that alley, but no one knows where they went. No bodies, no traces, nothing. Has anyone ever tried to find them? Faizan asked, growing restless. They have, but whoever tries to dig too deep ends up in trouble themselves. A chill ran down Faizan's spine. The officer looked around cautiously before speaking again. There's an old woman who lives at the end of the alley. She claims to have seen shadows, but people think she's crazy. If you really want to find your dog, talk to her. Faizan immediately went to the woman's house and knocked on the door. After a few moments, a frail, wrinkled face appeared behind it. Why have you come here? Her voice trembled. I need to find my dog. He disappeared in that alley last night. A strange fear flickered in the old woman's eyes. Son, that alley is no ordinary place, she said softly. Faizan held his breath. Did you see something? The woman peeked from behind the door. There's something there, something that fears the light. I've seen a shadow many times in the dead of night. Whatever it is, it takes the dogs away, and they never return. A shadow? Faizan's heart pounded. The old woman nodded. Yes. I've seen the dogs fighting, barking, and then suddenly, silence, as if they were swallowed by thin air. Faizan's hands went cold. Could a human be behind this? The woman shook her head. If it were humans, someone would have been caught by now. But here, no traces are left, as if they never existed. Fear and anger now boiled inside Faizan. I can't just leave Tiger like this. I'm going back tonight. The woman's eyes widened. Son, don't go. You have no idea what danger you're stepping into. I don't care. I will find my dog, Faizan declared firmly. The woman hesitated, then sighed deeply. If you must go, take some light with you. That thing lives in the dark and flees from the light. A thought struck Faizan. What if I take a powerful flashlight and see what this shadow really is? He quickly thanked the old woman and left. Now all that remained was to wait for nightfall, return at night. Faizan glanced at the clock. It was midnight. The streets were silent, and the dim moonlight cast eerie shadows on the ground. In his hand was a powerful flashlight, as bright as a car's headlight. If that thing fears the light, tonight I'll expose it. Taking a deep breath, he returned to the same alley where Tiger had disappeared the previous night. As soon as he stepped inside, an unsettling silence filled the air. Everything was the same. The crumbling walls, the flickering streetlights, and the abandoned house whose door had mysteriously shut on its own. But tonight there was one difference. There were more paw prints on the ground, and they looked fresh. Faizan cautiously moved forward, sweeping the flashlight in every direction, but nothing unusual appeared yet. "Tiger!" he called out, but only his own voice echoed back. The first sign. Suddenly a strange sound broke the silence. Skr, skr. It was the sound of something crawling, like a heavy body dragging against the wall. Faizan quickly turned the flashlight toward the noise, but there was nothing. Then all of a sudden, a window in the old house creaked open, slowly. Faizan's breath caught in his throat. Someone was inside. Mustering his courage, he stepped forward and placed his hand on the door. It felt ice cold, as if covered in frost. What is happening here? Without warning, the door creaked open on its own. Inside, there was nothing but darkness. Faizan shone his flashlight inside. And then, his blood ran cold. Lying on the floor was Tiger's collar. He was here! Faizan rushed inside. The atmosphere was eerie. Scratch marks covered the walls, and the air smelled foul, like something was rotting. Does someone live here, or something else? Faizan cautiously moved forward when suddenly, footsteps echoed from the upper floor. Tap, tap, tap. He aimed the flashlight at the staircase. Nothing was visible within the circle of light, yet the footsteps continued. "Who's there?" Faizan called out. No response. And then he saw it. From the darkness upstairs, a shadow peeked out. Two glowing red eyes stared at him, completely still. Faizan felt his blood freeze. This wasn't human. This was it. The thing that had taken Tiger. Suddenly, the shadow moved, rushing down the stairs at lightning speed. Faizan instinctively pointed the flashlight straight at it. Shh! A horrifying shriek filled the air as the creature recoiled, as if burned by the light. It really fears the light, Faizan realized. But there was no time to waste. Where is Tiger? He sprinted forward, pushing open a door. Behind it was a basement, and there, Tiger was there. He was chained, surrounded by an eerie black mist, as if something unseen held him captive. Faizan rushed to free him, but the chains were too strong. Above him, the shadow stirred again. Gah! Without thinking, Faizan directed the flashlight at it. Shh! The creature let out another ear-piercing scream, shrinking back into the darkness. But Faizan knew it wouldn't stop for long. With one final pull, he snapped the chain. Tiger, run! Tiger leapt up, trembling but free. Faizan grabbed his collar, and they both dashed toward the exit. Just as they neared the door, the creature lunged at them. Grow! But Faizan was ready. He turned and blasted the flashlight's beam directly at it. Shh! The shadow let out a deafening scream, thrashing wildly, as the light fully engulfed it. It dissolved into smoke. Silence. Faizan and Tiger ran onto the street, panting. Tiger looked up at Faizan, fear still lingering in his eyes, as if he knew this was no ordinary experience. Faizan turned back. The house was still there, but its doors and windows were now tightly shut, as if nothing had happened. What was that? Was it really a shadow, or was I dreaming? Then he reached into his pocket and felt something. Tiger's broken chain. Proof that it had all been real. But one question remained. Could it come back?